The guy whose body I just took over spent 3 years acting like a loyal dog for his billionaire CEO wife. 3 years. He cooked for her. He cleaned for her. He stood there and smiled while her family called him a freeloader, a parasite, a stray she should have left in the gutter. And then, the moment her precious first love came crawling back from overseas, this idiot decided the noble thing to do was sign a divorce agreement and walk away with absolutely nothing. No money, no apartment. Not even the watch on his own wrist. What a complete, breathtaking idiot. I know all of this the way you know the plot of a movie you've already seen. Because I have. In my old life, this was a novel I read at 3 in the morning, screaming at the screen, "Why are you like this, you spineless fool?" And now somehow I'm wearing his face. I can feel the divorce pen still warm in his fingers. So the second I opened my eyes in this body, I did the one thing he never had the spine to do. I tore the agreement in half, then in quarters. Then I let the pieces flutter down onto the glass desk like very expensive confetti. Across from me, my wife, President Nari Han, 29 years old, cold enough to frost a window in summer, slowly looks up from the shredded paper. Her eyes are sharp, calculating, the eyes of a woman who has fired men twice her age before breakfast. Look at her staring at me. She's probably already deciding which security guard gets to break my legs. Go ahead, sweetheart. The second one of your thugs lays a finger on me, I leak the corporate audit files straight to the Kong Group, every shell company, every cook number. By this time next month, your whole family empire is bankrupt, your stock is toilet paper, and your darling first love is on a private jet out of the country, with your little sister's dowry zipped into his carry-on. Don't worry, though. When you've lost everything, I'll be generous. I'll buy you the cheapest earn money can buy. I lean back in the chair and stretch like a cat in the sun. This is the most relaxed I've felt in 2 lifetimes. President Han, I say out loud, smiling lazily, if this ice queen wants me gone to make room for her childhood sweetheart, that's fine. I'm a reasonable man. Just approve my $5 billion compensation package and I'll have my bags packed by dinner. $5 billion, a number I picked specifically because it's insulting. And that's when Nari makes a sound I did not expect. It's small, strangled, like a woman who just walked into a glass door. Her voice cracks. The unshakable CEO cracking. What did you just say? I blink. What's wrong with her? I run the last 10 seconds back in my head. I said the line about the compensation. The vase joke I kept inside. The audit files I kept inside. The urn, I definitely kept the urn inside. I didn't open my mouth for any of that. That was all in my own head. So why is she looking at me like I just read her last will and testament out loud? Is she losing it? Did the stress finally crack her? Whatever, not my problem. If she doesn't sign by 5 o'clock, I'm taking her mother's favorite antique vase on the way out the door. Call it a tip. Nari flinches. She actually flinches, her hand jerking toward the credenza where I happen to know from the novel, her mother's priceless Gorieo vase is displayed under a spotlight like a holy relic. My smile freezes. No way. There's no way before I can finish the thought, Nari moves. She doesn't walk around the desk. She lunges across it, sending her gold pen and a stack of contracts scattering. She seizes the revised divorce papers, the new ones, the ones her lawyers drafted this morning, the ones that would have shoved this fool out with pocket change, and she rips them apart with both hands. Not delicately, not with a CEO's poise. She tears them like a woman ripping up a death warrant, her perfectly manicured nails shredding through the legal seal, her breath coming fast and ragged. President, I start. She slams both palms flat on the desk so hard the glass rings. $5 billion? Her eyes are wild now, locked onto mine like I'm a bomb that might go off. $5 billion? I'll transfer $10 billion into your account right now. I stare at her. The divorce is canceled. She's breathing like she ran here. Do you understand me? Canceled. There is no agreement. There never was. You are staying in this house. You are staying forever. The spotlighted vase glints behind her. Untouched, protected. Somewhere in the building, a clock that isn't ringing yet is already 5 o'clock in my imagination, and not one of my threats was spoken aloud. I open my mouth, I close it. I have transmigrated into a body, torn up a contract, threatened a billionaire, and accidentally negotiated myself a number twice what I asked for, all without understanding a single thing that just happened. I say. Because here is the part I don't know yet. The part that's going to make the next month of my life completely insane. Every single thing I think, every threat, every prophecy, every petty little remark about urns and vases, my terrified wife can hear all of it. And she just realized her freeloader husband is the most dangerous man she's ever met. 3 days after my wife offered me $10 billion to not leave, she informed me, through gritted teeth and a smile that looked physically painful, that I would be attending family dinner. Mother insists, Nari said, straightening my collar like she was defusing a bomb. Please, whatever you do tonight, please what? Please don't embarrass you in front of the in-laws who have spent 3 years treating me like mold on the bathroom tile. She went pale and gripped my collar tighter. Weird woman. So now here I am seated at a dining table longer than my old apartment, under a chandelier that probably costs more than my old life was worth, across from the 2 people in this world who hate me most. Madam Lee, my mother-in-law, silver hair, iron spine, a string of pearls she wears like brass knuckles. She looks at me the way one looks at a stain. And Hannah, the bratty little sister-in-law. 22, dressed head to toe in things with logos, scrolling her phone like my presence is a personal insult to her data plan. I still don't understand why it is at the table, Hannah says, not looking up. Didn't we finally get rid of him? Hannah. Nari's voice is a warning. What, Minyu Oppa is coming back into the country soon. He's even throwing a big welcome back party. He belongs at this table, not this leftover. Ah yes, Minyu, the childhood sweetheart, everyone's favorite golden boy. I pick up my chopsticks and help myself to the short rib. It's excellent. $10 billion money buys very good short rib. Too bad none of you have any idea what your precious Minyu is actually here to do. Across the table, Madame Lee's teacup pauses halfway to her lips. He's not coming back for the cute little reunion. He's coming back to gut this family like a fish. First, he'll charm his way onto the company board. He's already got 2 of the older directors in his pocket. Then he goes for the family trust, the one with everyone's inheritance in it. The teacup is now frozen in midair, and Hana, poor loud, brand-obsessed Hana. I glance at her chewing gum. That welcome back party she's so excited about, that's the trap. Minyu's going to get her alone, get her drunk, and have a photographer take a very embarrassing set of photos, the career-ending, family-shaming kind. Then he uses them to blackmail your mother into signing over her shares. He'll be smiling the whole time he does it. And little Hana won't even see it coming because she thinks he's charming. The chopsticks slip out of Hana's fingers. They clatter against the porcelain. The whole table goes silent. I look up. Something wrong? Hana is staring at me, not with her usual disgust, with something closer to horror. Her gum is forgotten. Her phone is forgot. Brother-in-law, she whispers. I choke on my rice. What? I mean, she lunges to her feet so fast her chair screeches. Your glass is empty. Let me water wine. We have a 1982 something. I'll get all 3. She's already scrambling toward the kitchen, then doubling back to refill my water with shaking hands, spilling half of it. Under her breath, white-faced, I'm never going to that party. I'm never drinking again. Oh my God, did the rich kid hit her head? Madame Lee sets her teacup down very, very carefully. When she looks at me, the stain in her eyes is gone. In its place is something I have only ever seen in war documentaries. Aiden, she says, my name. She has never once used my name. You were saying about Minyu. I wasn't saying anything, old woman. I was eating your ribs. I didn't say anything, mother. She flinches at the word mother like it's a blessing. Whatever. They'll find out about Minyu the hard way, same as the novel, not my circus. I reach for more short rib. Honestly, the only smart move would be to quietly move the trust into a protected account this week before Minyu gets his board seats and to make sure Hana is never, ever alone with him at that party. But what do I know? I'm just the leftover. Madame Lee stands up. She walks the entire length of the table, past her daughters, past the priceless plates, and stops directly behind my chair. Then she places both hands on my shoulders and begins, very firmly, to massage them. I freeze with a rib halfway to my mouth. Nari, Madame Lee says in a voice that could command an army, why is your husband's plate not full? Why is his glass not topped? Is this how we treat the head of this household? Mother, Nari sputters. You will pamper this man. Madame Lee's grip on my shoulders is shockingly strong. You will treat him like the treasure he is. And Hana, her eyes cut to her younger daughter, you will not attend that party. We will discuss the trust tonight, privately. Already not going, Hana squeaks, refilling my water again. Brother-in-law, is the rib okay? Should I get a different rib? A better rib, she adds, eyes huge and pleading. I look from the mother gripping my shoulders, to the sister offering me a better rib, to my wife who has her face in her hands and is whispering something that sounds like not them too, not them too. What I think very slowly is wrong with these people. All 3 of them flinch in perfect unison. I set down my chopsticks. I look at the empty seat at the end of the table, the place set for the golden boy who isn't here yet, the one who's coming to burn this family down without ever raising his voice. Enjoy your welcome back party while you can, Minyu, I think, and I see all 3 women lean in to catch every word. Because for some reason, this family is about to be a lot harder to kill than you planned. I have no idea why they're acting like this. I have no idea they can hear me. And I definitely don't know that somewhere across the city a man with a perfect smile just felt the first cold draft of a plan starting to go wrong. A week into my new life, I have reached a conclusion. My wife is running the most elaborate corporate manipulation scheme I have ever witnessed. It started the morning after the dinner. I woke up to breakfast in bed. Not toast, breakfast. Grilled abalone, fresh fruit cut into little flowers, a coffee made by a woman who, until recently, wouldn't have spit on me if I were on fire. Good morning, darling, Nari said, sitting on the edge of the bed in a silk robe, smiling so hard her cheek muscles trembled. Did you sleep well? Is the pillow firm enough? I can order softer ones. I can order anything. There it is. I sipped the coffee. It was perfect, of course. Classic hostage negotiation. She thinks if she keeps me comfortable and confused, I won't run with the 10 billion. She's buying time while her lawyers find a loophole to claw the money back. Nari's smile spasmed. Nice try, Ice Queen. I've read enough business thrillers to see the play. You pamper me, you lower my guard. Then the moment I sign something domestic sounding, you've quietly relocked me into a prenup with no exit. I would never, Nari blurted. Never relock, I mean more coffee, see? She's not even denying it well. I decided right then on my strategy for the foreseeable future. I would let her. Look, I'm not an idiot. The previous owner of this body was an idiot. He gave love for free and got insults in return. But me, if a stunning billionaire wants to play doting wife to keep me from leaving and the price of admission is that I get to lie here eating abalone and accepting shoulder massages while I wait for my money to clear, I'm going to enjoy every single second of it. Bring on the lobster, I thought, stretching. I'm a kept man now. It's a beautiful life. Down the hall, I distinctly heard Nari hiss, get the lobster to a maid. Convenient. The sweet wife routine escalated daily. She started canceling meetings to sit beside me. She'd ask my opinion on the most random things, supplier contracts, port logistics, a hostile little tech firm sniffing around her shipping division. This is so transparent, I'd think, flipping through a documentary on her enormous TV. She's pretending to value my input so I feel important. Whatever, I'll play along. And then, because the firm she'd mentioned was a name I half remembered from the novel, though if I were her, I wouldn't touch that shipping deal. In the book, that's a front. Minyu seeds it with bad debt, then triggers a default that craters her stock. Real amateur trap. Obvious, honestly. Nari, sitting beside me knitting like a 1950s housewife, badly went rigid. She set down the needles, picked up her phone, and right there in front of me she dismantled it live. Kildadejan shipping deal, she said, voice gone glacial. Yes, all of it today, and pull our exposure to anything Me News directors have touched in the last quarter quietly before close. A pause. I don't care about the penalty, do it. She hung up, set the phone down, and picked her knitting back up like she'd done nothing more dramatic than order tea. You just canceled it, I said, surprised. Just like that. Just like that, she agreed, eyes shining at me with an intensity that made me deeply uncomfortable. You're so wise, darling. I didn't say anything, woman. She flinches, recovered, and resumed her terrible knitting. I went back to my documentary. A probably overheard me muttering, not my problem, the lobster's getting cold. I would learn much later, far too late, that this was the exact moment Me News' first real trap died in its crib. He'd built it beautifully, used his pet directors to push that shipping default through, time for a Friday close, coordinated a whisper campaign with 2 financial reporters so the stock would gap down before the market could react. The novel always called it a foolproof opening gambit, except by Friday, Nari had already unwound every position. The default hit empty air. The reporters had nothing to print. The stock didn't dip, it rose because she'd used the dead deal as cover to announce a logistics partnership that made her look like a visionary. Me News actually showed up at her office that afternoon. Perfect smile, perfect suit, a bouquet of white lilies. Nari, he reportedly said, all wounded warmth. You don't return my calls after everything we were. And my ice queen wife, who I still assumed was just a paranoid woman running a hostage scheme on me, looked at him and said with a smile colder than the morgue, I'm a married woman, Director Cho, and my husband doesn't like white lilies. He says they look like funeral flowers. I had in fact thought exactly that 2 days earlier, staring at a delivery in the foyer. Out loud to no one, in an empty room, Me News left without the smile. That night, Nari came home and did something new. She knelt by the couch where I was sprawled, took my hand in both of hers, and looked up at me like I was the answer to a prayer she didn't know she'd been saying. Was today a good day? She asked softly. Did you want for anything? Anything at all? God, she's laying it on thick. The loophole hunt must be going badly. I yawned. Relax, lady, I'm not running yet. The money hasn't even fully cleared. And honestly, I looked at the absurd spread of food, the woman holding my hand like treasure, the mother-in-law who now sends me daily fruit baskets. This gilded cage isn't half bad. I could ride this out for a while. Nari pressed my hand to her cheek, eyes closing in relief. I had no idea I'd just promised to stay. I had no idea she'd heard it. And I really had no idea that in 2 days, a woman named Sora was about to walk back into my life and turn my comfortable little hostage situation into a war. The peace lasted exactly until Tuesday. That's when Nari, still deep in her doting wife campaign, made a tactical error. She brought me to her office. Just for the afternoon, she'd said, fixing my tie with trembling care. There's a partner signing. I want my husband beside me. Then quieter like a prayer, and I want everyone to see you're mine. Sure, show off the trophy husband, whatever keeps the lobster coming. So there I was, lounging in a chair in her glass-walled boardroom, bored out of my mind, until the door opened and a woman walked in. And my whole brain lit up like a slot machine. Sora Min, CEO of Mineral Tech, 31, sharp as a blade and twice as elegant. The only person in this entire world I actually respect. Because, and this is the part nobody here knows, in my old life I built the foundation of her company. Late nights, whiteboard wars, 100 arguments that ended in brilliance. She's the one mind I never had to slow down for. And here she is, walking into my wife's boardroom like a memory I didn't expect to get back. President Han, Sora said, shaking Nari's hand. Then her eyes flicked to me, curious. And you are? Oh, this is interesting, I thought, sitting up. Sora's company is exactly where I'd want to be. Real work, real challenge. None of this kept man nonsense. I looked at her, then at the contract on the table, my mind already racing 3 moves ahead. Honestly, the second my 5 billion clears, I should just take the money, walk out of this gilded cage and go partner with Sora. Build something real. She's the only person here worth a damn, competent, sharp, doesn't need handling. With her eyed, actually, the temperature in the room dropped about 40 degrees. I looked up. Nari was no longer smiling. The doting wife was gone. In her place stood something I hadn't seen since the day I tore up the divorce papers. President Han, Nari, predator, and right now those predators' eyes were fixed on Sora Min like she was a hostile takeover that needed to be destroyed. Director Min, Nari said, and her voice could have frozen the harbor. How kind of you to come personally. Sora blinked, sensing the shift but not its source. Of course. We've been excited about this partnership, my husband, Nari interrupted, gliding over to my chair and sitting directly on its arm, draping herself across my shoulders, was just telling me how dull the corporate world is. Weren't you, darling? I was telling you that in my head, you absolute lunatic. She pressed closer. He much prefers being home, with me, where he's adored. Sora's eyebrows climbed. The other executives suddenly found their documents very interesting. What is happening, I thought, frozen under my wife's death grip. Why does she look like she's about to declare war on a woman she just met? And then because the universe enjoys watching me suffer, I made it worse without saying a word. Sora always was the better strategist, though, I thought wistfully, half remembering old victories. Smarter than anyone in this building. If I had to bet on one CEO in this room, Nari stood up so fast her chair rolled back and hit the wall. The signing is postponed, she announced. The room froze. P postponed, stammered her own CFO. I have concerns about Mineral Tech's long-term value. Nari's smile was a guillotine. I'll need to review whether they're really the best partner available, or whether I've simply been settling for something that looks impressive from a distance. She turned and looked directly at me when she said looks impressive from a distance, and I had absolutely no idea why. Sora, to her credit, just smiled coolly and gathered her things. We'll be here when you're ready, President Han. On her way past my chair, she paused, studied my face for 1 second too long, and murmured, have we met? You seem familiar. We built an empire together in a life you don't remember, I thought. Behind me, I heard Nari's pen snap in half. That night, the campaign went nuclear. I came out of the shower to find my wife waiting. She had changed. She had clearly prepared. There was wine. There was candlelight. There was a billionaire CEO trying very hard to look casual and failing because casual is not in her operating system. Sit, she said, patting the couch. Let me take care of you. This is aggressive even for the hostage scheme, I thought, sitting warily. She poured the wine. She fed me a piece of fruit by hand. She massaged my shoulders with the focus of a woman defusing a bomb, occasionally muttering things under her breath like better than her and I have a tech division too and I could build something real. I could. Are you okay? I asked. I'm a wonderful wife, Nari said fiercely, kneading my shoulders hard enough to bruise. I'm competent, I'm brilliant, I am more than enough. I don't know who you think is sharper than me, but they're wrong. Did she somehow hear about Sora? I wondered. No, impossible, I never said a word. She heard that too and gripped my shoulders so hard I yelped. I stared up at my beautiful, terrifying, inexplicably jealous wife, a woman who had just torpedoed a profitable partnership and was now aggressively proving her worth to a man who hadn't asked her to, and I came to my second great conclusion of this new life. I had no idea what was going on with her, but the corporate manipulation theory was starting to fall apart. Because no manipulation scheme on Earth would make a billionaire CEO this rattled, this possessive, this desperate to win a competition I didn't even know we were having. And somewhere across the city, a man with a perfect smile was about to give my wife a much better reason to fight for me by trying to humiliate me in front of the entire world. The invitation came on cream cardstock with gold edges, the Han Group charity gala, and conveniently Minu's long-promised welcome back party rolled into the biggest social event of the season. 300 of the wealthiest people in the country, a ballroom of chandeliers, and one returning golden boy making his triumphant public debut. You don't have to come, Nari told me, fixing my cufflinks, her jaw tight. Minu will be there. He'll try something. I can feel it. Of course he'll try something, I thought, watching her hands. This is the part where he humiliates the freeloader husband in public, and the part where he tries to get Hana alone for those photos. Classic 2 for 1. Discredit me, isolate you, ruin your sister, position himself as the man who belongs on your arm. Nari's hands went still. Hana stays glued to my mother all night, she said quietly to no one. She doesn't take a single drink she didn't pour herself. Smart, I thought idly, not knowing I just handed her the plan. The gala was exactly as obscene as I expected. What I noticed first, oddly, was Hana, usually impossible to keep in one place, standing rigidly beside Madame Li all evening, refusing every glass a waiter offered, eyeing every photographer like they were assassins. When Minu's hired photographer tried to steer her toward a private champagne lounge upstairs, Madame Li materialized like a silver-haired specter, took the man's camera to admire it, and somehow returned it with the memory card snapped clean in two. Hana never left her mother's side. The trap that was supposed to end her never even got to spring. I found a quiet corner with a glass of something that cost more than a car, and that's when Minu made his move on me. He didn't do it quietly. Everyone, please. His voice rang out over the crowd, warm and laughing, a microphone in his hand. The string quartet stopped. 300 faces turned. Before the auction begins, I just have to say how moved I am to be home, and to see my dear Nari again looking as radiant as the day we first fell in love. A murmur rippled through the room. Cameras lifted. Of course, Minu went on, eyes finding me across the ballroom, that perfect smile widening. I was surprised to hear she'd married. To this gentleman, was it? The one who, I'm told, doesn't actually work. Laughter. Soft, cruel, expensive laughter. There it is, I sipped my drink. Right on schedule, you smug, tell us. Minu called out, walking toward me now, playing the crowd like an instrument. What is it you do exactly besides spend my Nari's money? I only ask because a real man builds something. A real man provides. He stopped a few feet away, lowering his voice just enough to be theatrically audible. A leech just attaches. The ballroom held its breath, waiting for the freeloader to crumble. I opened my mouth to say something deeply unimpressive. God, this guy, he thinks he's so untouchable. If only these people knew he's 3 months from a fraud indictment in his own scheme. The fake charity foundation he's donating through tonight, it's a money laundering shell. Half the men clapping for him are about to get subpoenaed. And the investment fund he's pitching at the bar, it's the same Ponzi structure that collapsed his company in Singapore. He didn't return home a hero. He fled here one step ahead of an Interpol notice. I never said a word of it out loud, but Nari heard every syllable, and Nari moved. She crossed the ballroom in heels like she was walking onto a battlefield, took the microphone from a startled waiter, and smiled at 300 of the richest people in the country. Director Cho is right, she said sweetly. A real man builds something, so let's talk about what Director Cho has built. Minu's smile flickered. Let's start with the Hae Sung Charity Foundation, Nari continued, strolling toward him, the one collecting your generous donations tonight. Funny thing, my husband mentioned over breakfast that its registration documents don't match its banking structure, so I had my my people pull the filings this afternoon. She lifted her phone. It's a shell. Everyone that flows in tonight flows straight out to 3 offshore accounts. Shall I read the account numbers or would you prefer your guests keep their checkbooks closed? The laughter died. 300 faces swung toward Minu, and the investment fund you've been quietly pitching at the bar. Nari's voice was honey over a blade. The one with the guaranteed returns? My husband says it has the exact structure of the fund that collapsed in Singapore 18 months ago. The one you ran. The one you left the country very quickly to escape. She tilted her head. Should we ask the gentleman from the financial regulator's office? Yes, the one by the door, whether the name Cho Minu is on any notices crossing his desk. A man near the entrance straightened, suddenly the center of attention. Minu's face had gone gray. Nari, these are lies. I'm your first love. How can you're a fraud who came home to bankrupt my family and ruin my sister, Nari said, dropping the honey entirely, her voice ringing out cold and clear over the silent ballroom. Oh, and your little photographer? My mother has his camera, or what's left of it. She let that land. You made one mistake tonight, Director Cho. She walked back to me, slid her arm through mine and faced the crowd with her chin high. You insulted my husband. In front of me, she looked up at me then, not with the desperate, performed adoration of the last few weeks, but with something real and fierce and terrifying. This man, she announced to 300 witnesses, is worth more than every person in this room, including me, especially you. The cameras went insane. Minu fled. He actually fled, pushing through the crowd, abandoning his perfect smile somewhere on the marble floor. I should have been gloating. The villain, humiliated. The plot derailed. Hana safe, everything going perfectly. Instead, I was staring down at my wife, who was still gripping my arm like she'd fight the whole room for me, and feeling something I had not planned to feel in this lifetime. She didn't have to do that, I thought, dazed. She torched her own public image. Picked a fight with 300 powerful people. For me, the leftover, the freeloader. Nari's eyes softened, hearing every word. And for the first time since I woke up in this body, my running monologue changed direction entirely. Okay, I thought, looking at this ruthless, scheming, infuriating woman who'd just gone to war for me. She might be an annoying ice queen, but she's my annoying ice queen. And that scammer thought he could humiliate her family in front of me, Minu. I'm going to ruin your entire life. Nari's breath caught, and somewhere in the wreckage of his escape, the golden boy felt the ground shift because the freeloader he'd come to crush had just stopped playing defense. After the gala, the war stopped being a secret. You, publicly humiliated and quietly terrified, did what cornered scammers always do. He got desperate. And a desperate Minu threw traps faster than ever, which would have been frightening except for one small problem. My family had a cheat code. They just didn't tell me they had it. It became a routine. Every morning over breakfast, the 3 women of this household would arrange themselves around me with the focus of generals at a war table, and then they would simply wait for me to think. Darling, Nari would say, refilling my coffee, eyes locked on my face. Eat slowly. No rush, take your time. Weird how she always wants me thinking out loud at breakfast, I'd muse, buttering toast. Anyway, that bank loan Minu's pushing through her credit division, it's a trap. He inflated the collateral. When it defaults, he triggers a cross-default clause that freezes her operating accounts. Sloppy work, honestly. Any decent auditor would catch the inflated appraisal in the second appendix. Across the table, Hana would already be texting furiously. Nari would already be on the phone. Madam Lee would already be writing second appendix on a notepad and underlining it 3 times. Such a beautiful morning, Nari would chirp, hanging up. Don't you think, darling? Did she even hear a word? I never mind. The lobster's getting cold. By lunch, Minu's loan trap was dead. The inflated appraisal flagged to regulators and his pet banker was updating his resume. This happened every single day. He set a trap with a supplier, dead by Tuesday. He tried to plant a smear story with a tabloid. Hana, who apparently knew every gossip blogger in the city, had it killed and replaced with a glowing puff piece about the Han family's devoted son-in-law before lunch. He attempted a hostile share purchase through a proxy. Madam Lee bought the shares out from under him so fast the broker got whiplash. From Minu's side, it must have looked like sorcery. Every move countered before he finished making it. Every secret known before he spoke it. I can only imagine him alone in some dim office, screaming at the ceiling, HOW. How do they know? He never once suspected the answer was a freeloader eating lobster who didn't know he was doing anything at all. The thing I did start to notice was Nari. The performance had changed. Somewhere between the gala and the third dismantled trap, the desperate, brittle, doting wife act had quietly become something else. She still pampered me, but now she also argued with me. Brought me real problems. Spread financial documents across the bed and asked what I saw, then watched my face like the answer was the most fascinating thing in the world. You think 3 moves ahead of everyone, she said one night, almost accusing, staring at me over a spreadsheet. You knew about the cross-default clause before my own legal team did. Who are you? A guy who read the book your life is based on, I thought. But sure, let's go with brilliant. She didn't laugh, she couldn't admit she'd heard it. But her cheeks went pink and she looked at me for a long moment with an expression that was no longer fear and no longer strategy. It was the look of a woman realizing she actually likes her hostage. I thought, watching her watch me. When she's not faking the sweet act, she's kind of sharp. Funny, even. The way she gutted that broker today was honestly impressive. Nari's pink deepened to red. She suddenly became very interested in the spreadsheet. I filed it away as a problem for later. Madam Lee, meanwhile, had stopped playing defense entirely. Defending against this snake is exhausting, she announced over dinner, stabbing a piece of beef like it owed her money. I'm tired of swatting his traps. I want him gone. I want him to wake up with nothing. I want his name to be a curse. Mother Nari sighed. I know a man, Madam Lee continued serenely, who knows a man who can make a person's bank account simply forget they exist. Legally, mostly legally. Aiden, she turned to me, eyes gleaming. If you wanted Minyu destroyed, truly destroyed, salt the earth destroyed, how would you do it? Hypothetically, over dessert. Cute that she's asking. Well, hypothetically, I leaned back. Easy. You don't chase his traps anymore, you bait one. You let him think he's found one weak spot, the family trust, and let him reach for it. The second his proxy signs to move that money, every transfer is time-stamped, traced, and handed straight to the prosecutor who's already building the Singapore case. You don't fight the scammer. You hand him a rope and compliment the noose. Table went dead silent. Slowly, 3 women turned to look at me with identical expressions of awe. What? I said. Why are you all looking at me like that? I didn't say anything. Nothing, brother-in-law, Hana squeaked, shoving the entire dessert plate toward me. You're so smart it's scary. Have more cake. I really need to figure out what's wrong with this family. They flinched in unison. Again, that night I caught my reflection in the dark window of the study and had a quiet, unsettling realization. I'd come into this life with one plan: take the money, run to Sora, build something real, never look back. But I just spent 20 minutes happily designing the downfall of a man's entire existence. For these people. For the bratty sister who now treated me like a deity. For the terrifying mother-in-law who sends me fruit. For my scheming, sharp-tongued, infuriating wife who torched her reputation in front of 300 people because someone insulted me. When had I'm taking my money and running turned into we're going to ruin Minyu together. When had it become we, I didn't have an answer. But across the city, the golden boy was about to make his final, most desperate gamble. One that would either save him or hand my family the rope to hang him with. Minyu took the bait exactly the way I said he would. We didn't even have to chase him. Desperate men don't need chasing. They walk into the open door themselves. All Madam Lee did was let one carefully chosen rumor slip that the Han family trust was being quietly restructured, and for 48 hours the oversight signatures would be handled by a single junior officer. A weak spot. A door left ajar. It was a lie, of course. The junior officer was a forensic accountant on loan from the prosecutor's office. The ajar door was a vault with the lights off and a camera in every corner. Minyu walked right in. At 11:40 on a Thursday night, his proxy signed the transfer authorization to siphon the family trust into 3 offshore accounts. The same 3 accounts from the gala, the ones Nari had named in front of 300 witnesses. Every keystroke timestamped, every signature traced, every one of intent to commit fraud recorded in high definition. By midnight, the file was on the prosecutor's desk, stacked neatly on top of the Singapore case. By morning, Cho Minyu was a headline. I watched it unfold on the enormous TV, a cup of coffee going cold in my hands as a man with a once perfect smile was walked out of his hotel in handcuffs, jacket over his head, flashbulbs eating him alive. Huh, I thought. He actually pulled the jacket over his head, just like the book. The charges stacked up beautifully. Securities fraud, the laundering shell, the collapsed Singapore fund, the attempted theft of the trust, the blackmail scheme his own photographer testified to after Madam Lee's broken camera turned out to have a very intact backup card. His pet directors flipped within hours. His charm, the only weapon he'd ever really had, was worth nothing in an interrogation room. The Han Empire wasn't just safe. With Minyu's network of co-conspirators exposed, Nari quietly absorbed 3 of his shell-held subsidiaries at fire sale prices, and the company emerged richer and stronger than before. The villain was defeated. The family was secured. The plot was over, which meant my job was done. I sat in the study that night and did the math. The 10 billion had cleared weeks ago. It had been sitting in an account in my name, untouched, gathering interest, while I ate lobster and dismantled a fraudster and somehow became this family's favorite person. My one condition, the payout, had been met twice over. I was free. This is it, I thought, staring at the account balance on my phone. The job's done. Minyu's finished, the family's safe, the money's mine. Nothing's keeping me here anymore. I could leave tomorrow. Go find Sora, build something real like I always planned. I waited to feel the rush of freedom. It didn't come. Instead, I thought about breakfast tomorrow, and how Hana would shove cake at me, and how Madam Lee would send up a fruit basket the size of a small car, and how Nari would sit too close and ask my opinion on something she already knew the answer to just to watch my face. Why does the idea of leaving feel like losing something? I didn't notice the study door had opened. I didn't notice Nari standing there frozen, listening to every word of a thought I believed was private. I just kept doing the math, the cold practical math the previous owner of this body never had the spine for, and I muttered the conclusion out loud to the empty room, except it wasn't empty. The deal's done, I said quietly. Guess there's nothing keeping me here. Behind me something shattered. I turned. Nari stood in the doorway, a dropped glass in pieces at her feet, and the expression on her face wasn't the cold CEO, wasn't the performing wife, wasn't even the fierce woman from the gala. It was raw terror. The same terror from the very first day, but pointed at something completely different now. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. Her voice cracked down the middle. You got your money, you fixed everything, and now you're going to go to her. How does she always don't? She crossed the room, glass crunching under her heels, and grabbed the front of my shirt with both hands like she could physically hold me in this life. Don't you dare, I know you think about her. I know, I've always known, every time you think about taking that money and walking out to go build something with Sora, I have to sit there and smile and pretend I can't. She stopped. The room went very, very still. I looked down at the woman gripping my shirt, at the tears she was furiously trying not to let fall, at the impossible sentence she had just started and couldn't finish. Pretend you can't, what? I said slowly. Nari's eyes went wide. The blood drained from her face. She'd said too much. After all these weeks of flinching and chirping and changing the subject, she'd finally, in a moment of pure panic, let it slip. And every strange thing that had happened since the day I woke up in this body, the impossible breakfasts, the cancelled deals, the synchronized flinches, the way she always seemed to know exactly what I was thinking, all of it suddenly clicked into place with a sound like a vault door closing. Nari, I said, my voice dangerously calm, the cynical strategist fully awake now. Can you hear my thoughts? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The terror on her face was the only confirmation I needed. For 3 months I had walked through this house insulting these people, predicting their doom, casually narrating every secret in my head, believing the entire time that I was the one with the secret. I started to laugh. I couldn't help it. All this time, I said, all this time, you could hear everything. Aiden, every threat, every spoiler, every time I called your mother terrifying and your sister a brat. The laugh died into something quieter, sharper, more dangerous, and considerably more interesting. And every time I thought about leaving, Nari flinches. I looked at my wife, my brilliant, scheming, terrified wife who had heard the inside of my head for 3 months and chosen, every single day, to keep me anyway. And I smiled the way I had on the very first day when I tore up a divorce agreement and changed both our lives. Well, I said, now this is interesting. Knowing my wife could hear my every thought changed the game completely. For her, it was a catastrophe. For me, it was the most fun I'd had in 2 lifetimes. The morning after the reveal, I tested it. I sat across from Nari at breakfast, looked her dead in the eye, and thought, very deliberately, I wonder if I should take the 10 billion and book a one-way flight to Sora's office today. Nari's coffee cup shattered in her hand. Just kidding. She glared at me with the fury of a woman who has just realized her opponent now holds the same weapon she's been cheating with for 3 months. That, she hissed, was cruel. That, I said smiling, was payback for 3 months of synchronized flinching. Do you have any idea how unsettling that was? But here's what I didn't say out loud, what I let her hear instead, quiet and honest under the teasing. You could have thrown me out the first day. You heard every awful thing I thought and you kept me anyway. That means something, I just haven't decided what yet. Nari went very still, then very pink. Then she stabbed her eggs and refused to look at me, which I was starting to recognize as her version of a love letter. The trouble was, Nari did not trust a good thing to last. She'd spent 3 months living in terror that I'd leave, and the fact that I now knew she could hear me didn't soothe her. It made her more desperate because now she couldn't even hide the panic, so she started scheming. Openly, badly, adorably. First came the assets. A lawyer happened to visit with a stack of documents, a full marital merger, joint ownership of everything, structured so that leaving would cost me more than the 10 billion I'd walk away with. Nari, I thought, flipping through it, this merger is designed so I lose money if I divorce you. Is it? She said innocently. I hadn't noticed. You drafted it. I delegated it. She absolutely drafted it. Sign on page 4, darling. Then came the bigger trap. I noticed it because I notice everything now, the way she'd gone quiet, the calendar she kept checking, the doctor's appointment she scheduled and then rescheduled, the particular kind of nervous energy she radiated one evening when she sat me down with 2 glasses of wine and that specific look in her eye. Oh, I thought, the strategist in me clicking through the pieces. Oh, she's going to try to. Nari froze, wine halfway to her lips, caught red-handed by my own brain. For a long moment we just looked at each other. Her mortified, me putting the final piece in place. You were going to trap me, I said slowly, with a baby. I prefer permanent partnership initiative, she said weakly. I should have been horrified. The old me, the cynical pragmatist who tore up a divorce agreement and demanded 5 billion, would have walked out the door right then. A woman scheming to chain me down with a child was exactly the kind of madness I'd planned my whole new life around avoiding. Instead, I started laughing, because somewhere in the last 3 months, between the lobster and the dismantled traps and the gala and the synchronized flinches, I had fallen for exactly this. Her ruthlessness. Her scheming. The fact that this brilliant, terrifying woman who could have anyone had decided she would rather commit elaborate corporate fraud against the institution of marriage than lose me. You don't have to trap me, I said. Nari blinked. What? I let her hear it directly, no filter, the truest thing in my head. I'm not going anywhere. I haven't wanted to leave for weeks. I just enjoyed watching you panic too much to say it. The wine glass slipped from her fingers and she didn't even notice. Her voice broke. You're staying? I'm staying. I leaned back, lacing my fingers behind my head, grinning at the chandelier. Where else would I find a wife this unhinged? A mother-in-law who wants to legally erase her enemies. A sister-in-law who treats me like a god. Sora's competent, sure, but Sora's boring. I looked at my wife, my scheming, weeping, victorious wife. You people are a circus, and I've decided I want to be the ringmaster. I'd come into this life a reluctant hostage, plotting my escape with $5 billion. I was leaving it the willing king of the entire empire. Nari launched herself across the couch and into my arms, and for once, for the very first time, I didn't have a single cynical thought to hide. She heard that too. 5 years later, daddy, watch, I can do the thing. Our daughter, 4 feet of pure chaos in a tiny business suit her grandmother insisted on, climbed onto the garden bench and struck a pose she'd clearly stolen from her mother in a boardroom. You see anything, Peanut? I asked, lying back in the grass. She scrunched up her face, lips concentrating hard. Grandma's gonna bring cake and cookies, and Auntie Hana's bringing a present. Across the lawn, Madam Lee appeared right on cue with a cake the size of a tire, Hana trailing behind with an armful of gifts, both of them shouting about the future heir. Spooky, I said, just like your old man. I never did figure out why my thoughts leaked into this family in the first place, why a transmigrated man's running monologue came through loud and clear to one terrified wife, then a whole household. The best theory I have is that the universe took one look at the spineless doormat who used to live in this body and decided his replacement needed to cheat a little to survive. Whatever it was, the ability faded after our daughter was born. None of them can hear me anymore, not Nari, not Madam Lee, not Hana. We were all a little disappointed, honestly. It made cheating at love so efficient. The mineral tech partnership, Nari finally signed it on her terms the moment she was certain she'd already won. Sora got her deal and her returns and never did place where she knew my face from. Some things are better left in the life nobody else remembers. Nari settled into the grass beside me, watching our daughter terrorize the flower beds and rested her head on my shoulder. Any regrets, Ringmaster? She murmured. You could have taken your 5 billion and walked out the door that very first day, free and clear. I looked at the empire she'd built, the family that adored me, the tiny tyrant in a business suit who had my eyes and her terrifying ambition. Nah, I said and meant every word, best deal I ever made.